Hello, everyone. We are now on part two of our reading on the incarnation of Christ, taken this time on systematic theology of Louis Berkhoff in his new edition containing the full text of systematic theology and the original introductory volume to systematic theology. Now, on the statement of the Church's view respecting the person of Christ, definition of terms of the word nature and person. With a view to the proper understanding of the doctrine, it is necessary to know the exact meaning of the terms nature and person, as used in this connection. The term nature denotes the sum total of all the essential qualities of a thing, that which makes it what it is. And nature is a substance possessed in common with all the essential qualities of such a substance. The term person, on the other hand, denotes a complete substance endowed with reason and consequently a responsible subject of its own actions. Personality is not an essential and integral part of our nature, but is, as it were, the terminus to which it tends. A person is a nature with something added, namely independent subsistence, individuality. Now, the Logos, or Jesus Christ, assumed a human nature that was not personalized, that did not exist by itself. Now, regarding the propositions in which the view of the Church may be stated, Berkhoff stated that there is but one person in the mediator, the unchangeable Logos. The Logos furnishes the basis for the personality of Christ. It would not be correct, however, to say that the person of the mediator is divine only. The incarnation constituted him a complex person, constituted of two natures. He is the God-man. The human nature of Christ as such does not constitute a human person. The Logos did not adopt a human person so that we had two persons in the mediator, but simply assumed a human nature. Brunner declares that it is the mystery of the person of Jesus Christ that at the point where we had the sinful person, he has, or rather is, the divine person of the Logos. At the same time, it is not correct to speak of the human nature of Christ as impersonal. This is true only in the sense that this nature has no independent subsistence of its own. Strictly speaking, however, the human nature of Christ was not for a moment impersonal. The Logos assumed that the nature, or rather that nature into personal subsistence with himself. The human nature has its personal existence in the person of the Logos. It is impersonal rather than impersonal. For that very reason, we are not warranted to speak of the human nature of Christ as imperfect or incomplete. His human nature is not lacking in any of the essential qualities belonging to that nature, and also as individuality, that is, personal subsistence in the person of the Son of God. This personal subsistence should not be confused with consciousness and free will. The fact that the human nature of Christ, in and by itself, has no personal subsistence does not mean that it has no consciousness and will. The Church has taken the position that these belong to the nature rather than to the person. Now, the one divine person who possessed a divine nature from eternity assumed a human nature and now has both. This must be maintained over against those who, while admitting that the divine person assumed the human nature, jeopardize the integrity of the two natures by conceiving of them as having been fused or mixed into a tertium with a sort of divine human nature. Now, this time on God the Son incarnate, on the Doctrine of Christ by Stephen J. Wellum, on his book on chapter 6 regarding the humanity of Christ. God the Son incarnate. In the last chapter, we saw that Scripture establishes the full deity of Christ as a necessary part of his identity. In this chapter, we will see that the Scripture insists that the full humanity of Christ is just as necessary for us to know who he is. While most people today more quickly deny or diminish Jesus' divinity and accept his humanity, this has not always been the case. In fact, the early church first struggled against heresies that rejected the real and complete humanity of Christ. Moreover, while accepting Christ as a man comes more easily to a culture that largely scoffs at the supernatural, this does not entail that the nature of Jesus' humanity is accepted or understood on the Bible's own terms. So once again, we need to look at how the authoritative storyline of Scripture presents God the Son incarnate. God created man in his image to spread the rule and glory of God over all creation. The first man and vice-regent of God, however, rebelled against the Creator, covenant Lord, and brought all of humanity and the rest of creation into ruin under the divine curse. Yet God remained committed to his original plan and promised to reverse the effects of sin and death, redeem a new humanity, and restore all of creation. As the divine plan developed through the biblical covenants, its covenant mediator entered the stage of redemptive history with the hope of bringing forth the promised true image Son King who would restore God's rule over creation through a righteous humanity. But every mediator failed as a covenant partner with God and as a representative of humanity. And that ends our reading of the part 2 on the subject of the incarnation of Christ. And more to come on our next reading. God bless everybody, and once again, have a great day, and see you again next time. God bless.